Okay, thank you. And now the session is for IRDR PhD and MRes showcase. I will hand over to our PhD student, Shaw and Miles.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. And in this session, I will introduce almost all IRDR PhD students' research case in the university. And because of the time, we don't have opening Q&A session, but if you have any queries or questions, feel free to contact, because within the video, they'll have their own personal contact in the link. If you can't find their personal contact, you also can find the personal detail, the contact, the phone or email address on IRDR website. Please feel free to visit. And I will share my screen to display the video. And if anyone have some problem with or cannot get access to the video, I will share the link on the YouTube channel. Please feel free to visit.
Welcome to the IRDR PhD and MRes Research Showcase session. Earlier, we have a panel discussion about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, but research students in IRDR are doing far more than that. If you are curious about how the IRDR research students dealing with troubles and what kind of contribution do they make for our society and academic research, this session will properly answer your question. Within this session, you will see the fruitful and abundant research fields of disaster risk study. It widely covers the study of early warning systems, seismology, geohazard, emergency preparedness and response, healthcare protection, civil protection, shelter and housing resilience, and the very most fashionable and favorite topic, COVID-19 pandemic. The research case study covers almost all continents of the planet Earth. The effort that research students spend is tremendous, and their potential is unlimited. In the next 1 hour, it will be fascinating, it's going to be interesting, and it's going to be stimulating. Please enjoy. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am Aisha, a first-year PhD student at IRDR Center for Digital Public Health and Emergency. I'm working on the mosquito population modeling for early warning system project in Brazil. Dengue and Zika are examples of serious diseases affecting mainly developing countries such as Brazil. Recife and Campina Grande are one of the regions in the northeastern section of Brazil to be hit hard by the Zika virus outbreak in 2015. Aedes mosquito has been identified as the main vector carrying the Zika virus in Brazil. It's known fact that the increased abundance of the Aedes mosquito is typically associated with the standing water, which serves as a hotspot for breeding. Also, it's important to consider other factors such as climate conditions that drive the mosquito to increase in population size. These factors must be taken into consideration for the spatial and early warning prediction of breeding hotspot for mosquito. Nowadays, remote detection and monitoring of infection disease outbreak in real time is strongly needed to control the outbreak. Recent advancement in technologies should be employed in such contexts, such as cloud computing, IoT devices, smartphones, and GIS. My contribution to this project will be by using the Internet of Things, which is an intelligent system of sensor devices and processing unit which allow exchanging data. The IoT devices are being utilized to address different issues and challenges, such as physical location of object or people, weather condition, water quality, sound recording, and also filming. The use of the IoT provides good quality data with high granularity, continuous monitoring, and real-time measurement updating. So my proposed approach is using 3 types of sensors to collect some parameters. First one, about the mosquito itself by sensing the presence and detecting the motion of mosquito. Second sensor will collect data about weather condition, and the third one will measure the water quality to find the most suitable environment for mosquito breeding. All data will be collected and processed in real time and will be used in implementing different models. The project will assist government healthcare center and hospital in case of emergency situation by providing prediction of infected area with real-time data, hotspot map visualization, and automatic reporting. Despite the significant enhancement the IoT may add to the project, yet some limitation and ROM can be improved. For example, improve the Zika app by adding some feature as taking photo of breeding site, then use the image processing for automatic eggs counting. Also, utilizing machine learning and artificial intelligence in terms of modeling and analysis. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Hi, I'm Claudia. I'm a PhD student at IRDR, and I'm working with Joanna Walker and Gerald Roberts. My research focuses on the seismic hazard associated to the extensional fault systems that characterize the Italian Apennines. Italy is one of the countries with the highest seismic hazard in Europe, and the seismicity is concentrated mostly in the central and the southern areas where the faults are located. These structures can generate earthquakes of moderate and large magnitude, causing extensive damage and loss of life. My research focuses on investigating how the geometry of individual faults and of the fault system influence the seismic hazard. And since the central and southern Apennines have a very different geometry, this makes it an ideal place to investigate this. I am also interested in how faults interact with each other and how the earthquake occurrence is linked to this interaction. My work has been focused on collecting data from fault scarps surface in the Apennines. And in particular, I'm interested in data on the fault location and slip rates, because these are the main controls of the location and magnitude of future earthquakes. Data collected in the field can also be used to model the fault interaction. Using those data together with the information from historical catalogs of the seismicity, it's possible to calculate the stress changes due to strong earthquakes that occurred in the Italian faults in the last few centuries. This is an example of the stress calculated from the historical earthquakes in the southern Apennines. This can be used to understand if the particular geometry of this fault system produces differences in fault behavior and in the seismicity. So this research will contribute to the understanding of how seismic hazard is affected by the variability in fault geometry. Improving our understanding of faults location and motion and how faults interact through time is important to mitigate the seismic hazard and inform society about earthquake risk.
Super Typhoon Yolanda became the strongest typhoon to make landfall in Filipino history and is one of the strongest on global records. Yolanda affected more than 14 million people. Around 580,000 homes were destroyed and a further 550,000 damaged. The Eastern Visayas was the worst hit region and in 2012 was considered the second poorest region in the country. Shelter and housing in the post-disaster environment is vital because it provides physical protection against the elements, but also because by its very nature it's connected with social capital and with political, physical and economic prosperity. In other words, it's fundamental to the operation of our lives as functional human beings. Debate, however, continues to surround the relative effort and resources placed in constructing emergency and non-permanent housing versus building longer-term and permanent residences straight away for those having sustained major damage to their homes or having lost them entirely. The transitional phase, thought by many to be the link between the slowing of the emergency relief period and the onset of longer-term recovery, can play an important role in determining how quickly and how successfully that recovery from disaster can be achieved. housing build quality and condition, as well as building location, have been highlighted as major indicators of recurring vulnerability to hazards. We therefore chose to focus on housing-linked vulnerability specifically. Short-term post-disaster observations, however, though numerous, seldom allow the perspective to appreciate how transitional phases can link to longer-term recovery outcomes. By following our respondents through time, we can observe how their circumstances may change through the transitional period and into the beginnings of the recovery phase. We can also link this journey crucially to their situation pre-storm and to factors such as assistance received post-storm. Do pre-existing vulnerabilities such as poor housing build, living in hazard risk locations, unstable employment, precarious livelihoods and irregular salaries lead to the same or even higher vulnerabilities post-disaster? We ask, can vulnerabilities change? And if so, for the better or for the worse? And what may influence this change and to what effect? Is it more or less predictable that this household would rebuild to this standard, very similar to their home pre-storm? And is it more or less predictable that this household would remain in a hand-constructed debris shelter 3 years after their house was completely destroyed? 2 fieldwork campaigns provided the data for this study, the first in March 2014, 4 months after Yolanda, the second in September 2016, 3 years later. Both campaigns collected data from the same barangays in Leyte. This enabled us to question respondents in these barangays about their experiences throughout the entire 3 years following Yolanda, to chart each respondent's situation at 5 key points in time. We created a vulnerability score for each respondent based on the types of shelter and housing they experienced and the amount of time they spent in each. This was then examined in relation to several factors, including damage levels sustained to their original homes, the receipt of relief goods, the receipt of any cash and any housing materials that was supplied after the storm, and pre- and post-storm employment. Through this, we aim to investigate whether vulnerability largely remains constant throughout, or whether these other factors can in fact influence changes at various stages of the transition to the recovery. Early indications suggest that links may exist between people's vulnerability and their original housing damage levels, between vulnerability and the receipt of cash, and between vulnerability and the receipt of housing materials post-storm.
Hi everyone, my name is Sagar Zabi. I'm a PhD student from the UCL IRDR. I am from Oman, and my presentation is going to be analysis of governmental responses to selected cyclone emergencies. So the formal system for emergency management in Oman is highly centralized. It's a command and control system. It focuses on national capacities, and there is a severe lack of regional and absence of local capacities. For managing crisis, always forming an ad hoc response coordinating committee that almost does nothing during planning, mitigation, recovery. The system is largely governmental system where the voluntary and private stakeholders almost overload. So my interest is to understand how a system with these features would function under the different case studies. So the results of the analysis is that the response is a function of the emergency management initial state and the emergent conditions due to the interaction between the cyclone agent and the vulnerability of the place. The centralized command system would function in most occasions under normal conditions, and it did so in 2 case studies, Fid and Luban. However, it didn't function under a highly disturbed environment where critical failures obstructed the system to deliver its services to the isolated areas. So what happened in these areas when the emergency management system was unable to deliver its services? It was replaced by an informal, locally based, self-organized structure that had different features than the formal centralized emergency management system. It was led by a civilian local agency, and it was largely based on volunteer groups, local businesses, and local agencies. Three fundamental lessons to be taken from these three case studies. One is localizing disaster response to the lowest administrative level. And two is engaging the non-state actors in crisis management. Three is that planning should be based on working under disruptive environment and not based on the assumption of the continuity of critical infrastructure services. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
This is Khulud Al-Mufarji, IRDR PhD student. My research topic is enabling disaster volunteerism to be a significant force in civil protection system, a case study from Sultanate of Oman. Volunteers represent a valuable and a complementary resource and source of support to the official forces during disasters. What we know from the literature is that each country has different type of civil protection system, and they vary considerably in the way they handle and manage disasters. Non-governmental organizations will respond with or without official approval, and volunteers will appear with or without any request. The level to which volunteers incorporated in emergency response differs significantly from one country to another. Many researchers advocate for better collaboration and integration of non-governmental organizations, volunteering organizations, private sectors, and community members to be as a strategic and significant partner in emergency management. Volunteering organizations should be well prepared to recruit, train, equip, and retain volunteers in order to develop a functional workforce that can participate effectively during disasters. Those organizations should be embraced with appropriate legal context and embedded with governmental policies in order to be significantly incorporated with the official protection system. My research questions are why disaster volunteerism is not well incorporated within emergency management system, what factors enable the disaster volunteerism to be a significant force within the emergency management system, and what are the challenges that can face the development of a civil protection volunteer force. I chose Oman as a case study because there was no previous research conducted and published to study this subject in Oman. Oman has a developing emergency system which is still evolving. Oman, similar to many other countries, encounter volunteers that offer to help in disaster, and the system is not able to accommodate or handle such volunteers since there is no volunteer management system. Volunteering is deeply rooted in the cultural and religious beliefs and values of many people. My research methodology is purely qualitative research. I use content analysis to analyze various documents, and I've conducted in-depth semi-structured interviews, and I use thematic analysis to analyze those interviews. One of my research outcomes are this model that represent the success factors for incorporating volunteerism within emergency management system. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Qiu Shuang. I'm a math student in MRIS Risk and Disaster Reduction. My master project focuses on the performance of the UK government in managing the COVID-19 pandemic. The UK's coronavirus death toll has already far exceeded 40,000, second in the world to the United States. Even though the UK government's National Risk Register of Civil Emergencies has always put pandemics at the top of the list, the alarming figure appears to suggest that the UK government was ill-prepared for this catastrophe. Behind this extremely high death toll, how well has the UK tackled this public health crisis is therefore an issue worth examining. Avoiding the trap of hindsight, starting from the pandemic planning in the early 2000s to the first peak of COVID-19, my research aimed to re-examine how the UK went into COVID-19 pandemic and to explore emergency measures that could have been taken but were ignored by the UK government. As you can see, in terms of methods, the first step of my research is to construct a main timeline for the UK government's pandemic emergency responses, from SARS to the UK's first COVID-19 peak, and then two sub-timelines for the pandemic response performances of China and Italy will also be constructed. Besides, my research will extract lessons from exercises and reports on SARS in 2003 and discuss what was done in the UK and what was ignored. Meanwhile, examining the gap between the UK pandemic plans and the actual responses. My research will analyze what was done badly in the plan and what was not in the plan but should have been done. Moreover, my research will summarize outcomes of exercise, winter willow, and exercise signals, and analyze the effects on the pandemic emergency preparedness. After the sixth step, comparing with the response performances of other countries to explore the use or ignore of management measures by the UK government, my research will finally integrate the above analysis to conclude the government's strengths and weaknesses. Based on the above evaluation of UK's management performance of COVID-19, combined with the social cultural context and future development trends, the outcomes of my study could provide preliminary evidence for establishing emergent planning scenarios for future virus pandemics.
Hello, my name is Mohammed. I am a second-year PhD student from the United Arab Emirates. In this video, I will brief you about my project where I'm trying to answer the following question. Are earthquakes self-similar? And I mean, do earthquakes behave in the same way regardless of their magnitude? So let's start with an introduction. Although an earthquake may feel like a sudden shaking of the Earth's surface, the motion around the fault can continue to deform the area for hours to years after the event. And this motion is called the post-seismic deformation or the post-seismic slip, while the actual seismic slip is considered as the co-seismic deformation. In previous studies, medium to large earthquakes did not show any systematic relationship between the size of the co-seismic slip and the size of the post-seismic slip. In other words, the amount of post-seismic slip seems to be independent of the magnitude of the earthquake. This is consistent with the self-similar model of earthquakes, where large events are just scaled-up versions of smaller events. However, studies of small earthquakes in California showed large post-seismic slip following small events, indicating that the self-similar model does not hold. So my task is to investigate that in depth using borehole strain meter data from the USA and Japan. Why I'm doing that? That is important to enhance our understanding of physical processes driving earthquakes, improve our fault slip models, and improve seismic hazard assessment. My initial results of 17 earthquakes with intermediate magnitudes, and I mean magnitude 4 to 6, which are circled in red in this figure, along with other smaller and larger earthquakes from previous studies, shows a rough trend of post-seismic to co-seismic slip ratio, where smaller earthquakes have higher ratios or larger post-seismic slip than larger earthquakes. However, further investigation is required to reach a final conclusion. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Miles, and I'm a PhD student at UCL Institute for Risk and Disaster Reduction. The topic of my PhD research is prolonged field care in remote environments, which can also be known as prolonged healthcare in remote environments. The background to this research is I'm a nurse with experience of providing healthcare in various mountainous regions. Providing healthcare to people in remote environments is very challenging. The environment itself is very unpredictable, such as the weather, and also operating in a remote environment means that logistics is limited, such as the amount of equipment you can carry. There is an established body of evidence about providing emergency medical care in remote environments. However, there is very limited literature and even less evidence about providing prolonged field care in remote environments. The rationale for this area of practice and the research comes in two parts. Firstly, minor injury and illness is more common than medical emergencies in remote environments. If minor injury and illness is left untreated, the patient is at risk of clinical and psychological deterioration. Because of the remote environment challenges, it can be a long time before patients can be evacuated. Hence, prolonged field care will reduce the risk of deterioration until the patient can be evacuated or until they can recover. Secondly, prolonged field care also involves reducing the risk of health disasters happening, and therefore reducing the risk of patients obtaining minor injury and illness while in a remote environment. My research is divided into 4 separate studies, which involves interviewing expert practitioners in prolonged field care, surveys, and also a fieldwork case study in the Pakistani Himalayas next year. There are 2 collaborators for my research. Firstly, Remote Area Risk International, and secondly, the Royal College for Defence Medicine, which is a constituent of the Ministry of Defence. The aim of my research is to establish a prolonged field care theory, which is going to be used to inform the training of prolonged field care for people living, working, and travelling in remote environments. Prolonged field care is a new area of research which brings together various disciplines such as rural health, health geography, clinical education, and disaster risk reduction. Please follow me on Twitter to keep up to date with progress, and also on the IRDR blog. Thank you very much for listening.
Hi all, I'm Salma Zanjali, IRDR's first year PhD student at UCL. My research topic is the decadal variability of precipitation in Oman and the assessment of cloud seeding in the western of Al Hajar Mountains, supervised by Professor Peter Siemens. The vulnerability to water stress caused by the constant depletion of groundwater resources in Oman and UAE led to the decision to apply cloud seeding technology in 2003 to the UAE and Oman's northern Al Hajar Mountains to raise the freshwater supply by enhancing the rainfall. So basically, cloud seeding is a type of weather modification in which certain substances are spread to clouds in order to change the weather in the long term to address the adverse effect of climate change. It has a diverse uses, including rainfall enhancement. And based on the earlier Arabian Peninsula climate change studies in 2014, precipitation trends in recent decades have shown that Arabian Peninsula precipitation has become more intense with longer dry spells between these events. But this outcome was consistent with the RCP's projection scenarios according to IPCC Fifth Assessment Report in 2014, which predicted a higher frequency of intense precipitation. As a result, there is a research gap, as whether the cloud seeding is behind the intense precipitation episodes. This research arose from a need to understand the spatial and temporal variability as well as the frequency and intensity of precipitation on a decadal scale, which is a great demand before the assessment of the results of the seeding project in the western of Al Hajar Mountains where the seeding operations are conducted, in addition to determine the causation of extreme precipitation episodes in the country. Results of this study are used to clarify the scientific framework for cloud seeding in the western of Al Hajar Mountains, to verify the effectiveness and suitability of seeding operations as a mitigation measure to address the rainfall paucity in UAE and Oman. Besides, they can make a significant contribution to building resilience, reducing and adapting potential hazards. Thank you for listening.
Hi everyone, this is Tasnuva Tabassum, PhD student, Institute for Risk and Disaster Reduction, UCL. Today, I'm going to talk about my current research project. I work on earthquake forecasting, so my question to you is, what picture of earthquake comes in your mind when you think of it? I use this animation. It's funny, right? My research focuses on short-term aftershock forecasting. In the initial period after a massive earthquake, seismic stations fail to detect many small earthquakes or aftershocks. Rather, they detect only larger aftershocks. This happens due to the overlapping of earthquake signals. As a result, the data remain incomplete. I work on developing statistical methodologies to improve immediate earthquake forecasting using the incomplete early aftershock data. This picture depicts the scenario of short-term aftershock incompleteness. In statistics, earthquakes are modeled using Hawkes process or self-exciting point process. This process depicts the earthquake phenomenon exactly like the picture here. Suppose the red circle is the main shock or background event or mother earthquake. From this event, the first generation aftershocks, which are presented by green circles, are born or generated. These first generation aftershocks produce second generation aftershocks, presented by purple colored circles. Later, these second generation aftershocks produce further third generation aftershocks, presented by orange colored circles, and this process goes on. This is just a schematic diagram of Hawkes process. One of my PhD projects deals with imputing missing earthquakes in the initial period after main shock occurrence. My current project focuses on extending the existing project by incorporating not only earthquake times and magnitudes, but also their space locations. Sounds very easy, right? In practice, it is not. I am excited about my new project. Thank you.
My name is Xiao Han, first-year PhD student in UCL Institute for Risk and Disaster Reduction. My research aims to critically discuss the relationship between disaster and vulnerability. 5 years ago, I was in charge of the international cooperation project about community-based disaster management. It is a project that involves cooperation between China, the United Kingdom, Bangladesh, and Nepal. When I was involved in this project, there are many issues attracting my eyes. The impact of flood and hurricane in different places, such as southeastern China, in the United Kingdom, in Bangladesh, and the Philippines, are totally different. Earthquake caused many damages and casualties in China and Nepal, but the loss in some countries, for example, Japan, are insignificant if we make a comparison. If people are walking in the street of some barangay and saw the shelter that's made by timber, wood, or the brick that you can easily crush, you would not be surprised by the damage caused by the Typhoon Yolanda. We can also realize that there are many issues are more dangerous than the hazard itself after the Hurricane Katrina. The aim of my research will help to understand how the disaster risk is formed and accumulated, and what role does the vulnerability play in disaster risk accumulation. In my research, I will use some place in Cebu province as a case studies to do my data collection. Mainly, qualitative methods would be employed to collect and analyze the data, which includes the field trip in Cebu Island. My research is widely covered. It involved displaying discussion in vulnerability, livelihood challenges discussion, sustainable development, and some history. Scanning the dimensional barcode above to get more information about DRR and DRR in China. Thank you very much for watching.
Hello everyone. This is Shenrong Wang, a first-year PhD student. My research topic is about agricultural insurance in China under Joanna's supervision. China, as a large farming country, often suffers from various natural hazards like floods, earthquakes, and hails. The occurrence frequency of various natural hazards in China becomes higher due to climate change and global warming in recent years. The vulnerability of agriculture in China is obvious when facing these catastrophic events. It would climb a heavy human toll in the countryside and are easily to destroy farm property. So the role of agricultural insurance in China becomes more important nowadays. Through my literature review, I can conclude that the development of China's agricultural insurance has obvious regional characteristics. There are many contradictions in the centralized and unified development model of China's agricultural insurance at present, due to the different economic foundations, natural conditions, and economic development environment of each region. For instance, generally in terms of agricultural insurance, the eastern and northeastern regions are relatively developed, while the central and western regions are relatively backward. Therefore, it is worthwhile to further study of regional differences with regards to China's agricultural insurance. I decided to use qualitative method together with quantitative method to research on several regions of China that I want to compare their similarities and differences in terms of the development level of agricultural insurance. And then I try to model the data in order to analyze the current level based on the local conditions for testing whether the current development level of those areas could be improved by combining excellent experience from other regions.
Hi, everyone.
Due to we don't have enough time to play rest of the videos, to be honest, I really hate to post and interrupt the video playing because our PhD students are doing very well and spending extraordinary efforts on their work. So if anyone is interested in the rest of the topic, to be honest, I will strongly advise you to watch all of the video because it's really interesting. And I have posted the link in the chat of the Zoom. Please feel free to visit. And now I will handle the mic to Bayes. Bayes, it's your turn.
Thank you, Shaw. And now I want to, can you hear me? Yes. Now I want to conclude with a remark. Yes. Can you hear me, Shaw?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So here is the closing remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me to say a few words at the end of this conference. I'm very grateful for having had the opportunity to organize this event together with the colleagues from UCL IRDR. It was not possible without their help, to be honest. First, I want to thank Sarah Jill, our communications and events manager, for providing her much needed technical and administrative support. I also want to thank Professor Peter Sammons and Rosanna Smith for the overall guidance. Thank you, Professor David Alexander. Thank you, Professor Ilan Kilman, for finding a journalist. Miriam Orkut for organizing panel 2, Yasmin Bodiev and Poonam Yadav for Zoom setup here today. Gianluca Pescaroli for finding the UNDRR contact, Patricia Miles for social media promotion, and Shahan for organizing the showcase. I would say I really don't want to take the credit myself, although I'm the convener and organizer. It was all your help in organizing different sessions, panel discussions, and guiding me, helping me, and working together to make it a success. Overall, during this day, we aimed at bringing together academics, practitioners, decision makers, journalists, politicians, and other stakeholders in the same platform. And we tried to understand the ongoing challenges we are facing to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic. We brought case studies from different countries and continents, and we tried to find out strategies for building a resilient society at a global scale. We also highlighted how the COVID-19 pandemic is disproportionately affecting minorities, refugees, migrants, and other vulnerable groups. We hope the findings from this conference would help us to formulate policy briefs to better manage the current crisis and to better prepare for the next one. At the end of this month, we'll publish our conference report. Please note the entire conference was recorded and it is now available on our UCL IRDR YouTube channel. All the details will be updated on our website, on our UCL IRDR conference website. Please visit them and you can always email us for any further queries or collaboration opportunities. Finally, I want to thank you all for remotely participating in this conference and actively engaging in different sessions. We truly appreciate your support and dedication. Despite facing immense difficulty in dealing with the pandemic in our everyday life. This event is now finished, of course, but it doesn't really stop here. Please keep in touch with us. Please send emails, bring new ideas, tweet, keep the networks alive and collaborate. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you all have enjoyed today. Stay safe and see you next year. Thank you to the all attendees and all the speakers and everyone involved in this conference. Thank you again. I now close the conference.